Ethan Caldwell's phone vibrated in his pocket, a sharp pulse cutting through the steady rhythm of rain against his office window in downtown Seattle. He didn't need to check the time. 3:15 p.m., he already knew. Still, he glanced at the screen anyway, thumb flicking it awake. The message was simple. Cold. Final. Is she being served? Caleb Moore, his private investigator, never wasted words. Neither did Ethan. Leaning back in his chair, he let the leather groan under his weight, the corner of his mouth curving upward. Right about now, Madison Vale was standing in a conference room, dazzling some sneaker brand executives with that megawatt smile of hers, selling them a dream with her signature blend of charm and PowerPoint polish. And right in the middle of it, the process server had walked in. He could picture it, the room going still, her voice catching, that perfect, unshakable mask slipping just for a second as the man handed her the envelope and, in a voice just loud enough for everyone to hear, announced, "Mrs. Vale, your husband is filing for divorce. You've officially been served." She'd be gutted. Madison lived for control, for the spotlight. Her agency, Apex Creative, was her kingdom, and she ruled it with an iron will. Her Tuesday pitch meetings were sacred, her stage, her moment to command the room. Ethan had timed it down to the minute, 3:10 p.m., right as she'd be mid-stride, fully in her element. The humiliation would sear through her like wildfire. He let the thought warm the cold edges of his chest. The petition itself was straightforward. Straightforward indeed. No mention of Jessie Carter, the 28-year-old copywriter she'd been sneaking around with. No hint of the dirt he had on her, not yet. The asset split was clean, fair. The house in Queen Anne, the cabin on Whidbey Island, their bank accounts neatly divided. But Aether Tech, his drone company, the business he'd built from nothing over 15 years? Not a single mention. She wouldn't notice that right away, not through the haze of anger and disbelief. She'd be too busy locking herself in her corner office, dissecting every word, trying to unravel his strategy. She'd suspect he knew about Jessie. That much was obvious. 3 years of late nights, unexplained meetings, the scent of cologne that wasn't his. Ethan wasn't blind. But what she wouldn't realize, what she couldn't possibly guess, was how deep his plan ran, how long he'd been laying the groundwork while she strutted around, oblivious. He could see her now, eyes narrowing at the papers, perfectly manicured nails pressing into the pages as she searched for the trap she couldn't see. "Good luck, sweetheart. You're already 3 steps behind." His phone buzzed again. Another message from Caleb. Jessie's next move. 3:45 p.m. Ethan's smirk widened. The dominoes were falling, each one placed with surgical precision. Madison always prided herself on being the master strategist, the queen of spin. But today he was rewriting her story. And she wouldn't see the half of it coming. He turned toward the window, watching the rain blur the Seattle skyline, the Space Needle a ghostly silhouette against the gray sky. His phone lay silent now, but his mind drifted. Far from the storm outside, back to a sun-drenched afternoon in Austin 18 years ago. He had been 27, a lanky grad student nursing a lukewarm beer at a tech conference happy hour. Madison Vale had waltzed up to the bar like she owned the place. 24 years old, all legs and confidence, the kind of woman who turned heads without trying, a rising star in advertising with a laugh that could light up a room. "You look like you're solving equations in your head," she had teased, leaning in close enough for him to catch the citrus tang of her perfume. "Guilty," he'd shot back, grinning. "Fluid dynamics or a pickup line? Take your pick." She smirked, ordered them both tequila shots, and just like that, the match was struck. They tumbled into love fast and hard, like a summer blockbuster. Late-night drives down I-35 in his beat-up Jeep, wind whipping through her hair as they screamed along to Springsteen. "Never stop moving," she had told him one night, sprawled across his lap in a South Congress parking lot, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. "You and me, we're unstoppable." He had believed her. every single word. 2 years later, they stood in a Napa Valley vineyard, rolling hills bathed in golden light, whispering, "I do," under a canopy of vines. Her voice trembled when she vowed to love him forever. He felt his chest swell, promising the same. Their reception was pure magic. Twinkle lights strung above picnic tables, guests two-stepping to Johnny Cash covers, barefoot dancing until midnight. Their honeymoon in Kauai was a blur of sun-kissed mornings and tangled sheets, laughter echoing over waves. Then came Seattle. Madison landed a high-powered gig at a top ad agency. Ethan poured his soul into AetherTech, the drone startup he co-founded with his college buddy Ryan. 2 kids followed, Milo and Juniper, a house with a view of the Sound. Life was a picture-perfect postcard, her career skyrocketing, his drones changing industries, late-night kitchen kisses, burgers on the deck, dreams of retiring to that Whidbey Island cabin they'd bought on a whim. And then 4 years ago, the postcard ripped in half. Ethan had been at AetherTech's new SoDo office, finalizing a deal that would take the company global, when an email pinged into his inbox. Ethan Caldwell sat frozen in his chair, the hum of his SoDo warehouse office fading into white noise as he stared at the grainy photo on his screen. Madison Vale stood outside a dimly lit dive bar, leaning into Jessie Carter, her junior copywriter. Her hand rested lightly on his chest, his arm curled possessively around her waist. They were laughing, caught in a moment that didn't belong to Ethan anymore. He zoomed in, pulse hammering, that smirk, the same flirty, knowing curve of her lips she used to aim at him was now meant for someone else. A message came with it, scrawled in block letters, "Your wife has a new muse." Ethan sat motionless, the air sucked from the room. Was it a prank? A rival's cheap shot? His stomach twisted as he weighed the possibility, but deep down, he already knew the truth. The next day, he hired Caleb Moore, a private investigator with a reputation for unearthing secrets people preferred to keep buried. "Find me everything," Ethan had said. 2 months later, Caleb delivered. A thick folder landed on Ethan's desk, filled with photos, receipts, hotel bookings. A 2-year affair laid bare in crisp black and white. Jessie, that smug kid with the skinny ties and ironic glasses, had been in Madison's bed while Ethan played the devoted husband. Ethan had kept his composure, barely. "You sure about this?" Caleb had asked, voice low and steady. She was ex-military, sharp, efficient, no nonsense. Buzz cut, leather jacket, gray eyes that could slice through steel. "Positive," Ethan had said, his jaw set. "I want it airtight, legal, slow. She doesn't get to walk away clean." That night, he went home, kissed Madison on the cheek as she rambled about a client dinner, and started laying the groundwork. Ryan, his old college friend and co-founder of AetherTech, was looped in first. Then came Reese Calder, a ruthless divorce attorney, and Priya Das, a forensic accountant with an unmatched ability to expose hidden assets. "Give me 3 years," Ethan had told them over beers in a dim Capitol Hill bar, the rain pounding the roof. "I want her to lose everything she loves. And I want it to hurt." They had nodded. Game faces on. The team was formed. Madison thought she had the world spinning at her fingertips, but she had no idea Ethan was rewriting the playbook, page. Now, sitting in his office with the rain drumming against the glass, he flexed his hands, feeling the weight of the moment. Right now, Madison was reading those papers. Right now, her world was tilting, cracking, collapsing. She would assume the affair was the reason for the divorce, but she would never see the bomb Ethan had built around it. Not yet. At exactly 3:45 p.m., his phone buzzed again. Naomi's name lit up the screen. "Jessie's been served." Ethan set his mug down hard, the sound echoing in the quiet office. 2 weeks ago, Naomi had met Tara Linden, Jessie's wife, at a Tacoma cafe. She had slid the same folder across the table, the same damning evidence Ethan had seen, photos, timestamps, the full, ugly truth. Tara, a petite brunette with a steel-trap glare, had stared at the picture of Jessie and Madison tangled up outside a Fremont bar and simply said, That bastard's done. Naomi had recommended Reese Calder. Tara didn't hesitate. Her divorce petition hit Jesse 10 minutes ago. Infidelity, spelled out in bold, Naomi's evidence stapled right to the front. A public gut punch to match Madison's. Ethan almost wished he could see the kid's face, watch that cocky grin drain away as reality crashed down. By 7:30 p.m., the rain had softened to a drizzle when he heard the garage door groan open. He had been waiting. The kitchen lights were dim, the Puget Sound a dark smear beyond the window. The scene was set. 2 bar stools at opposite ends of the granite island, the rest shoved into the pantry. A bottle of Madison's favorite IPA from Fremont Brewing sat sweating in front of her seat. His whiskey, Maker's Mark, double pour, glowed amber in a tumbler by his hand. Footsteps clicked against the hardwood. He could hear her moving through the house, checking rooms, living room, den. Then she appeared in the doorway. Her navy blazer was wrinkled, her hair slipping from its bun, stray strands framing a face flushed with fury. She froze, eyes flicking from him to the setup, then exhaled sharply before stalking toward the bar stool, dropping her bag with a heavy thud. "Thanks for the beer," she muttered, voice tight. Lifting the bottle in a mock toast, she took a long swig, wiped her mouth, and set it down with deliberate slowness. Then she stared at him. The silence stretched between them, taut as a tripwire. "I don't want this, Ethan," she finally said, her voice softer now, more measured. "I don't want a divorce." Ethan took a slow sip of whiskey, letting the burn settle in his chest before setting the glass down with a deliberate clink. "I know," he said, voice calm, steady. "And I don't want a lying cheat for a wife." Her eyes flashed, but she didn't recoil. Instead, she leaned forward, elbows resting on the counter. "Let's talk like adults, okay?" She exhaled, trying to steady herself. "Yes, I was with Jesse, but this isn't some cheap fling. It's not what you think." Ethan let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Oh, it's exactly what I think." She flinched. "You've spent years telling me only a desperate coward would sneak around like that." He didn't need to spell it out. The folder Caleb had given him contained all the proof. She and Jesse in alleys, in cars, in places he had never taken her, places she had never let him. Her jaw tightened. He could see it now. The fight rising in her chest. Her breath came short and sharp through her nose. She was ready, but so was he. She forced her breaths to slow, visibly calming herself. "Why did you have to drag Jasper's family into this?" she asked, her tone dipping low, almost pleading. "Tara's got 2 kids. Little girls who need their dad." Lucas shook his head, choking back a bitter laugh. "You kidding me? Tara's a catch. She'll have some new guy stepping up before the ink's dry. Probably someone who doesn't screw around on her." He paused, letting the words sink in, then leaned forward, voice dropping to a sharp edge. "Why would I give a damn about Jasper's kids? He sure as hell didn't give a damn about mine when he was chasing you." Serena's lips pressed into a thin line, her knuckles whitening around the bottle. "I asked you to talk like an adult, Lucas. This petty crap isn't helping." He grinned, slow and wide, knowing it would rattle her more. "I'm not here to help, Serena." "You don't like my mouth? There's the door." "I won't stop you." She didn't move, just glared, her stillness a dare. He waited a beat, then tilted his head. "How long do you think I've known?" She blinked, caught off guard. He reached for the stack of props he'd laid out earlier, a manila envelope, the one that started it all. Sliding it across the island, he watched her hesitate before flipping it open. The photos spilled out. Her and Jasper outside that dive bar, the note beside it, "Your wife's got a new muse." She studied the picture, then flipped the envelope, squinting at the postmark. Her breath hitched. 4 years. You've sat on this for 4 years? Believe me, I've been busy, he said. his voice rising, booming off the cabinets. You had, what, 3 hours in your little war room at the agency today to prep for this? I've had 4 years, Serena. A shadow of dread flickered across her face, but he didn't stop. We haven't touched each other since I found out. No hugs, no nothing, just pecks on the cheek like roommates for years. And you didn't even notice. She swallowed hard, eyes dropping to the counter. I thought you checked out, lost interest. That got a belly laugh out of him. Loud, raw, sharp. Lost interest in you, yeah, not in everything else. He leaned back, crossing his arms, a smirk tugging at his lips. I've had my fun, Serena. Plenty of it. And from what I've seen, I've enjoyed it a hell of a lot more than you and your boy toy. Her head snapped up, shock widening her eyes. She slumped back in her seat, staring at him. You've been... What? You've got proof of me, but I've got nothing on you. Exactly, he said, his voice smooth now, lethal. That's the difference between us. She stared at him, her mouth parting like she wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Then suddenly she shoved back the stool, the legs screeching against the floor, and bolted from the room, her footsteps pounding up the stairs. Lucas didn't follow. He just sipped his whiskey, the burn in his throat matching the fire in his gut. He knew she'd be back, angrier, sharper, and he'd be ready. Minutes later, her footsteps thudded back down the stairs, heavier now, deliberate, like she'd armored up for round 2. Lucas sat still at the kitchen island, the whiskey glass cool against his palm. The Puget Sound stretched out beyond the window, a black void in the night. She'd changed. The blazer was gone, swapped for a gray hoodie and jeans, her hair yanked back into a messy ponytail. Sliding onto the stool, she grabbed her IPA and cracked open another bottle, the hiss of the cap sharp in the quiet. Her eyes were red but dry now, and when she spoke, her voice was all steel. You need to rethink this, Lucas, she said, leaning forward, elbows planted on the granite. I've got a team at the agency, some of the best minds in the game, and I've already called in an outside divorce lawyer. You keep pushing, and you'll lose. Big. He let her words hang there, savoring the bravado, then smiled. A slow, knowing grin, the kind that always made her twitch. That's the thing, Serena. Your team's playing catch-up, scrambling to fire their first shot tomorrow. He paused, watching her brow crease, confusion flickering in her eyes. My team? We've been at it for 4 years. And we're done. She frowned. What the hell does that mean? Lucas leaned in, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You say you love me? Fine. I'll take your word for it. Doesn't change the fact that you spent years lying to my face. But here's the kicker. He let the words drag, watching her brace herself. By the time this divorce is final, you're going to hate me. And the best part? Everything you'll hate me for. It's already in motion. You just don't know it yet. Serena snorted, shaking her head. You're bluffing. He exhaled, almost amused. You can't turn Milo and Juniper against me. They're my kids too. I wouldn't dream of it, he said, voice smooth, almost gentle. I haven't even talked to them yet. I'll call them this weekend. Along with my folks, yours, our brothers. I'll tell them. I filed because you've been sleeping with Jasper for years, Lucas said flatly. I expect them to treat you decent, keep whatever bond they want with you. That's their call. But if they doubt me, he exhaled, almost like he pitied her. I've got Naomi's report ready to send. Photos, videos, the works. You might want to just nod and admit it, save yourself the embarrassment. For a split second, Serena's face went slack, her carefully crafted armor slipping. But then, just as fast, it hardened. Her fingers dug into the bottle, knuckles tight, before she surged to her feet, her voice spiking to a yell. I'm going to take Sky Lucas. I'll rip it out of your hands. You'll see nothing but crumbs. There it was, her ace, the threat she thought would break him. Lucas tilted his head, feigning a frown, then let the grin spread, slow and smug. Sky. He blinked, mocking confusion. What's that? She stared, eyes narrowing like he'd just sprouted horns. Don't play dumb, she snapped. Your drone company, your precious startup, I'm taking it. I own half. He chuckled, low and long, the sound bouncing off the cabinets. Oh, honey, he said, voice dripping with condescension. Don't you remember? We sold Sky to that Canadian outfit, 3 years back? Big deal, 24 million, cash in hand. Her mouth dropped open in a silent gasp. She shook her head fast, her breath quick and uneven. That's illegal, Lucas. You can't sell without me. It's a marital asset. I never signed off. Didn't you? He leaned in, watching the panic flicker across her face. I locked that down myself. You gave me that power of attorney, broad as daylight. Back when we were rushing to Whidbey for that weekend. Your agency drafted it, remember? Needed it for some tax thing. You didn't even read it. He let the words settle, then delivered the final blow. I used it to close the sale, moved the money offshore. Nice and tidy. And you, sweetheart, you sign our tax returns every year, right? There, on the dotted line, showing the sale, the transfers, all of it. 3 years ago? Good luck digging that up now. Serena froze. Her breath turned shallow, eyes darting like a trapped animal's. Her lips moved, but no sound came at first. Then, faintly, You can't? She sank back onto the stool, her fingers loosening, the bottle slipping from her grip and rolling to the edge of the counter. Lucas watched, his chest tight, not with triumph, but something heavier. A dull ache he hadn't expected. She looked small suddenly, fragile. The queen of spin, knocked off her throne. He pushed his glass aside, stood up, and walked out of the kitchen, her silence trailing him like a ghost. Upstairs, he locked the guest room door, stripped to his boxers, and sat on the edge of the bed. The room's quiet pressed in. The whiskey buzz had faded, and his eyes stung. He swiped at them, angry, at the tears, at the years he'd spent loving her, at the man he'd become. To bury her. The alarm jolted him awake at 4 a.m. The house was still dark. When he checked the garage, Serena's car was gone. He showered fast, threw a duffel in his Tacoma, and hit I-5 south, the Seattle skyline shrinking in the rearview. Portland waited, a sleek loft in the Pearl District, his new life humming just over the horizon. 40 million bucks, set untouchable in accounts no U.S. court could claw back. Serena's team would spend weeks chasing shadows before they figured it out. He turned up the radio, some grunge throwback, and let the road eat the miles, the weight of her defeat settling deep in his bones. Lucas settled into his Portland loft, the Pearl District's brick walls and high ceilings, a stark contrast to the Queen Anne house he'd left behind. The $40 million from the Sky sale was safe, untouchable, a financial fortress. Serena's lawyers couldn't breach his defenses, but money wasn't enough. Not after 4 years of her lies gnawing at him. He wanted her to feel it, really feel it, in a way no court could touch. That's where the star quilt came in. Serena's pride and joy. A 150-year-old heirloom stitched by her grandmother's hands, passed down through generations of Vallis women. Every 4th of July, she draped it over the deck railing at their Whidbey Island cabin, the red, white, and blue stars glowing against the cedar planks as neighbors oohed and awed over burgers and sparklers. She'd beam, tracing the stitches with her fingers, always saying the same thing. This is my roots, Luke, my piece of America. For years, they kept it locked away in a cedar chest in the guest room, safe from moths, sun damage, or anything that could fray her treasure. Every summer, after the barbecue, they'd fold it together, her hands guiding his, before tucking it back into its wooden cocoon. Last summer, though, she'd been slammed at the agency prepping a pitch for some energy drink brand. The cleanup was done, the kids were asleep in the loft, and the air still smelled smoky from the grill. As she wiped down the kitchen counter, she glanced over her shoulder. Lucas, can you do me a favor? Sure. I've got an early meeting tomorrow. Tons of crap to prep. Could you take the quilt to the storage unit in Everett before you head back to Seattle? It's on your way. He'd nodded, casual as anything. Yeah, no problem, I'll handle it. She flashed a tired smile, kissed his cheek, and drove off the next morning, leaving the quilt's velvet-lined box sitting in his truck bed. Except he never took it to Everett. Instead, he brought it to Portland, stashed it in the climate-controlled closet in his new loft, right next to the stack of vinyl records he'd started collecting. Serena never noticed, never asked. Her mind was too wrapped up in campaigns and Jasper to care. Until now. The text came at 11:50 a.m. on July 3rd, the day before the big holiday. Lucas was stretched out on his balcony, a cold IPA in hand, the Willamette River glinting below. His phone buzzed. "Where's my quilt, you son of a—" He snorted, beer fizzing up his nose as he wiped his face with the back of his hand, a grin stretching wide. From inside Leela Pierce, his new neighbor, a 35-year-old painter with a wild streak and a laugh like a firecracker, poked her head out from his bedroom, towel drying her hair. "What's so funny?" she asked. After their morning together, old ghosts stirred. Lucas waved his phone in the air with a smirk. "Want to stick around for this?" Lila sauntered out in one of his t-shirts, her hair still damp, and dropped onto the chair beside him. "Only if it's good." He chuckled and scrolled through the flood of missed calls. Serena, her mom, Milo, Juniper, all piling up while he'd been distracted with Lila. He could have ignored them, let her stew, but the game was too sweet. He dialed Serena back, hit speaker, and leaned back as she picked up. Her voice was a hiss through the line. "What the hell, Lucas? Why'd it take you so long to call?" "Busy with a friend," he said, loud and lazy, winking at Lila. "What's up?" "I want my quilt, now." Her breath was ragged. "It's not at the storage unit. I checked the logs. Last access was when I pulled it out last year." He tilted his head, playing dumb. "Huh. Didn't I drop it off for you? Pretty sure I put it in your SUV, same as always." She choked out a sob, raw, desperate. "Don't lie to me, Lucas. I know you didn't. You were supposed to take it. You said you would. Please, just give it back. It's all I've got left of Nana." He let the silence stretch, sipping his beer, then sighed. "Sorry, Serena. I'm drawing a blank here. I loaded it up, handed you the keys. That's my memory. What are you pulling?" "Losing it like that." "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why are you doing this? I get it. You're pissed, but this is cruel, even for you." "Cruel's a strong word," he said, voice flat. "Maybe check your own mess before pointing fingers." "See you." He hung up, tossed the phone onto the table, and turned to Lila. "Round two, before you head out?" She laughed, shaking her head. "You're a piece of work, Drayton." She showered again, kissed him quick, and left, her easel calling her back to her studio. Lucas leaned on the railing, staring at the river. The quilt's absence hummed in his chest a quiet victory. Serena's calls kept coming, her family too, but he batch-dialed them later with a script. Calm, firm. Serena's stirring up drama before the divorce hearing. Don't buy it. No one could prove he had it. No security footage, no receipts, just his word against hers. And he'd always been the steady one. He pictured her now, pacing the cabin, her holiday ruined, that empty railing mocking her. 5 feet away, locked in his closet, the quilt sat, a silent trophy. She lost her empire, her lover, her kids' trust, and now this, her roots, snipped clean off. He finished his beer, the bitterness lingering on his tongue, and wondered if she'd ever stop underestimating him. Lucas didn't see Serena much after that July 3rd showdown. The quilt's absence was a silent wound she couldn't heal. The divorce dragged on for 16 months. Her agency's legal team throwing every trick they had. Motions, delays, even a police report about a stolen heirloom. Lucas stuck to his line, calm, unshaken in every deposition. I put the quilt in her SUV, same as always. No idea what she did with it. No one bought it, not fully, but they couldn't pin him either. No evidence, just her word against his. In the end, the judge split the house, the cabin, the accounts, but the $40 million stayed offshore, untouchable. And the quilt stayed in his Portland closet, a ghost he rarely looked at. They crossed paths a few times a year after that. Milo's college graduation, Juniper's engagement party. Polite nods across crowded rooms, the air between them heavy but civil. 12 years later, the call came. A crisp Boise morning, the Idaho sky wide and blue outside his condo window. Lucas was 57 now, his hair graying at the temples, still lean from hiking the trails around Mount Hood. His phone buzzed on the counter. Milo's name flashed on Lucas's phone. When he answered, his son's voice was tight, urgent. Dad, it's Mom. She's in hospice, pancreatic cancer. It's bad. She's asking for you. Lucas froze, coffee mug halfway to his mouth, the steam curling up in silence. She wants me there? His voice came out low. Yeah, Milo said, softer now. Please, Dad, just come. That afternoon, Lucas drove the 6 hours from Portland to Boise, the I-84 cutting through sagebrush and rolling hills, his Tacoma humming steady beneath him. The hospice was a low brick building on the edge of town, all beige walls and hushed voices, the kind of place that swallowed sound. Serena's room smelled of antiseptic and lavender. She lay small beneath a thin blanket, tubes snaking from her arm. She was only 54, but the cancer had aged her, hollowing her cheeks, turning her hair to brittle wisps. Lucas stood in the doorway, watching her sleep. Her chest rose and fell, slow, uneven. Memories hit him hard. Austin nights, Napa vows, the kids giggling over backyard fireworks. His throat tightened, his eyes burned, and he forced it back, stepping forward to sit beside her. She stirred an hour later, her voice raspy but warm. You were right, you know. A faint smile tugged at her lips. He looked up, caught off guard. I'm always right. But humor me. About what? Her eyes crinkled, a flicker of the old Serena. You said I'd hate you by the end of it, after everything I did. Jasper, the lies. I did hate you, Lucas. For years. He nodded slowly, the weight of it settling between them. Right back at you, Serena. Took a while to burn out. She chuckled, a dry, tired sound, and reached for his hand. Her fingers were cold. Do you still hate me? Lucas thought about it, rolling the question around in his mind. Finally, he shook his head. No. Hate's too much work. Ran out of gas for it. You? Same, she murmured. Not worth it anymore. They talked then for nearly 2 hours. Old stories spilled out. Milo setting off a Roman candle in the garage, Juniper's first bike ride ending in a ditch. Laughter came easy, softer than it should have, and when she dozed off mid-story, he stayed, just watching her breathe, knowing this was it. The last time. She woke later, groggy but sharp, just as Milo, his wife Kara, and their 2 kids tumbled in, filling the room with noise and warmth. Milo caught Lucas's eye, giving him a quick nod of thanks. Lucas took it as his cue to leave, slipping toward the door. Serena's voice stopped him. Lucas, wait! He turned. She glanced at Milo, then back at him. Give us a minute, hun. Milo hesitated, then ushered his family out. The door clicked shut behind them. Serena took a slow, shaky breath. I want Milo and Juniper to share the quilt. 4th of July, alternate years. Can you make that happen? The weight of it hit him. Lucas swallowed, then nodded. No words needed. She smiled, faint but real. And he left, the promise sitting heavy in his chest. 5 months later, July 4th. Serena had been gone 3 weeks now, buried under a Boise oak with a view of the foothills. Lucas drove to Milo's house, a sprawling ranch-style home on the edge of town. The backyard was buzzing with neighbors and thick with smoke from the grill. He'd spent the morning helping stringing lights, hauling folding tables, setting up chairs, while the kids raced around with sparklers. The last thing to go up was the centerpiece, the star quilt, draped over a wooden frame Milo had built. Its colors were vivid against the dusk, red, white, and blue stars catching the firelight. Juniper joined him and Milo as the crowd thinned, the three of them standing there, staring at it. Lucas' eyes stung, tears slipping free. And this time, he didn't fight them. He saw Serena in every stitch. Her hands tracing the fabric, her voice calling it her roots, her happy place. Milo clapped his shoulder, Juniper squeezed his hand, and together they stood in silence, the night wrapping around them. And that's a wrap. And that's it, folks, the end of today's tale. Did it play out like you thought, or did that twist catch you off guard? I'd love to hear what you think. Drop a comment below and let's chat about it. If this story grabs you like it did me, hit that like button, show some love, and if you're new around here or haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. I've got fresh, gripping stories coming your way every day, so click subscribe, turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's next. Thanks for sticking with me. See you in the next one. And just like that, everything changed.